Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to the Yeukai Business Show. I'm your host, Dennis Harhalakis, and today our guest is Jessica Eastman Stewart. Jessica is a world-renowned expert on all things productivity. So if you're struggling with or you'd like to learn more about time management, productivity, and team culture, then keep listening. We have got an amazing show for you. So Jessica, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much. It's a warm day where I live, an unusually warm day, but we're heading into the fall season, which is my favorite. So I'm just trying to pretend that that is here already, even though it's basically bathing suit weather outside.
Okay, yeah. For those of you that don't follow California weather, you've got heat waves and blackouts, but luckily the Zoom is working. So Jessica's with us today. And Jessica is the founder of the Joyfully Managed team. She's a former non-profit executive who now helps leaders of teams with more ease and joy. And I'm going to come back to the ease and joy bit because I think that's absolutely fantastic. We have got some amazing topics lined up. We've got setting goals at work, avoiding pitfalls, planning your week, and of course, getting that email under control. But before we go into those topics, Jessica, please tell us a little bit about your story, how you got here, and what you're up to at the moment with the Joyfully Managed team.
Thanks. I started my career as a classroom teacher. Then a handful of years into that, wanted to kind of have a systemic impact on kids and was joined a group of people who were starting a nonprofit advocacy organization and spent a little over a decade helping build that organization and get some policy and political wins for kids in California. And now I get to support leaders at home and at work with, like you said, finding more joy and ease. So my kind of things that I love to talk about are things like time management, productivity, team culture. And so I lead team trainings and really get to just spend time thinking and writing and training folks about how to find more joy in their work, which is a pretty lucky thing to get to spend my time doing.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I definitely noticed the joy thing because I love that you help leaders of teams lead with ease and joy. The ease will come to, but joy is not usually associated with team leadership. Could you say a little bit more about that and what team leaders can do to bring joy to that part of their work?
Yeah, well, I think, I have a hunch that joy might be the whole point of life. As I think about, what has motivated me, I think that's my purpose, is to create more joy and ease in the world and help more folks get access to that. And I think that's why I got into education, because actually it's clear that joy and ease is not equally accessible to everybody in the world. Absolutely. And the higher quality education you have access to, the more choices you get to make in your own life that allow you to have more ease and more joy and choices. And so I wanted to help make sure kids got a great education so they could have those choices. And so, we only get this one, what do they call it? Wild and precious life. And so why not make it joyful? And so, we spend so much time at work. I certainly want to work on a team where we're having a good time together. Doesn't mean that work is always fun. I mean, really nothing about life is always fun, but there can be joy. And it's certainly a lot better when you plan for that and you're intentional about it. And so I'm all about figuring out the ways that you can create more joy and ease in life, because I believe that, though joy and ease are not equally accessible to everybody, I believe they are things that the more we plan for, the more we can have.
Okay. And I'm sure you've got some really interesting insights into that area, because it seems to me that if you can bring some more ease into your life, then at least there's a bit more room for some joy if we're not all running around. So let's start with our first topic, setting great goals at work and avoiding common goal-setting pitfalls. Please share with us your insights in this area.
Yeah, well, I think goals are so important. I mean, the research is actually really clear that goals really matter. When there are clear goals, people achieve more. and all of that. So I think goals really matter. I think they're not the only thing that matters. I actually love a book, and I'm leading a training with a nonprofit staff right now about the book Atomic Habits and Habit Formation by James Clear. And I love what he writes about how goals can't be everything. Because if you think about, for example, the Olympics, every Olympian has the same goal.
They do.
They share the same goal, right? But they don't all win the gold medal or any medal, right? And so it's not just goals that matter. Execution really matters too, and habits and what you do every day.
Sure. It's the process, isn't it?
That's right. But goals do matter. So having a goal really matters. And I think as leaders, goals can be part of having our team be clear on what matters. And, I actually said this last week to someone that I think you can sometimes boil leadership down into creating clarity and then communicating clarity over and over and over again until something changes. Then you get clear again and then continue communicating that clarity. In other words, this as a team, this is what matters right now. This, one or two or three things. These is what we are most important for us right now. And then just reiterating, this is what we care about. This is what we're working on. This is what matters to us. And then things are going to shift. When they do, you create clarity on what matters now and then continue to communicate that. Because if your team wakes up every day understanding what matters for them to be spending their time on and what they're trying to achieve, that is a huge part of having an effective team.
Yeah, that makes a huge amount of sense. I spent a bit of time in management, and one of the things that was communicated to me is that you really need to, if you're managing a team, you need to do a few things. One is explain to the people that work for you very clearly, what is your job? How will you be managed? Yes. The second thing is, what does the guy next to you do? And how will he be managed? And how will he be assessed? And then what do I do? So that you're clear, my job may be to clear roadblocks, your job that you can't clear. But when people understand what their goals are and what your goals are as their boss or their leader, then it just becomes very much easier for people to go, all right, now I get it. Otherwise, they're going to probably drift towards the things they feel most comfortable or least discomfort around. So what are some of the pitfalls then that we need to avoid when setting goals?
Yeah, I think a couple things. I've seen folks set goals and not have clarity on who is ultimately responsible. Right. So I think having an ultimately responsible person is really important. And for really big things that one person is not, able to do by themselves, getting sub clarity. So for example, maybe we have a huge event and we're going to have 1,000 people come. There's probably there needs to be somebody who is ultimately kind of the president of that event, or I am the CEO of our summit, that is my job. I am the ultimately responsible person. If something is going wrong, I'm the one up late at night. But then you might need to say, well, who's the president of the food? And who's the president of the attendee experience? And who's the president of the vendors? And who's the president of the presenters? And who's responsible for the venue? So, and some people might have multiple areas, but who is responsible, I think, is really important. I think another thing that is common is setting goals and then forgetting them. So sometimes, and you can forget them because you have too many. If I ask you, like, what are your goals? And you're like, hold on, let me open up my spreadsheet. Like, that's not goals. You don't have goals. If you have to open a document, you need to be able to say them off the top of your head. So, but you also need to check in regularly on them, so that looks different. That might look at like something you do with a manager, direct report in a weekly meeting. It might be a monthly all hands meeting where the goals are reviewed. It might be board meetings. It really depends on the structure, but there has to be a way to say, we set these goals and how are we going to revisit them and see what needs to change? We set a goal to do X and we haven't, this quarter and we haven't gotten started on it. So now let's get started on it. You need to have those check-ins because another pitfall is believing that they're made of concrete and they can't change. Right. Goals are useless if they are completely unrealistic or irrelevant. So if you said you wanted to have 1,000 people attend that event and the event is now in a week and you've got 50 registrants, that goal is now no longer helpful because it is likely that you are not going to get there. And so if you want to have a meaningful goal for that last week, you need to revisit and say, what is ambitious but also reasonable and possible? And maybe we revise and say, you know what, given these changes, we're going to say that 100 is success, but we're going to have to, bust our butts to get to 100 in the next 7 days. And that's what success now looks like. Or, we said we were going to work on this, but actually, we were going to have this event and then, COVID happened. So the event is not happening at all anymore. And now what we're focused on is doing this thing to support our community in the beginning of a pandemic, so goals need to be flexible enough to change when the real situation on the ground changes, which is just the reality of life. And then I think the final one I would share is just getting the time horizon wrong. I think for different businesses and different organizations and people, the time horizon is going to vary, but setting, when I was leading at my nonprofit, one of the things that we discovered that for us in an advocacy environment, quarterly goals were really the sweet spot to do some of our best planning work. So we would set annual goals, and that works great for things like fundraising, but also in a changing political and policy environment, it is difficult to predict some of the variables, and they're out of our control, that could really impact your work. If you're working in advocacy in a school district and the superintendent resigns all of a sudden, that is a pretty significant shift. If the election for school board go this way versus this other way, that can have a big impact on what you can do. Maybe you can do more now. Maybe you can't do nearly the same things and you need to switch and focus on another area that also matters for your advocacy. So figuring out what's the right time horizon to make goals, in my business right now, I'm currently operating off of quarterly goals, but I'm also really enjoying taking 10 minutes each month to set goals for the month, because I'm finding that they feel really meaningful. I can really say, what can I get done in the month of September, and set some really clear goals. So I feel like, you don't want to set goals for like every week, maybe for your business, but maybe setting them every year is actually not enough. They're not frequent enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And different goals then would have different time horizons, and you need to have a time horizon that's appropriate, that gives you the flexibility and the clarity. And I think one thing that comes up for me when I listen to you talk about this is that people need to feel safe so they can come to you and go, I'm really sorry, this isn't working. So through no fault of their own, or maybe through fault of their own. So either maybe, as you say, the environment's changed, or maybe as we wanted 1,000 people, we ain't going to get 1,000 people for X, Y, and Z reasons. And otherwise, people end up are unable to face the reality of the situation if they don't feel safe. And then that means they're going to hide something or lie about something, or just create a much bigger problem down the road. So I think, safety is a key part of this process, along with clarity. This is what your goal is. This is what I'm going to judge you on. This is how you'll be rewarded. But if it's not going to happen, please come to me and let's talk about it before we get to the day before we do the counting. So, otherwise we're both in trouble here. So that's really interesting, because it's not just that you got to have goals. You got to have the right goal you got to have multiple goals possibly. You got to have the right goal and the right time horizon for the process or the work that you're doing. So this brings us, I guess, if you've got goals, this brings us very neatly into planning your week and adjusting when things shift. So I'm pretty sure you've got some really interesting broad guidelines and concepts around this that will be really helpful for people.
Yeah, exactly. So planning your week, I think, is one of the most important, maybe the most important thing you can do to be effective in your work. And I've met a lot of folks who are a little bit resistant to planning for a couple of reasons. One, they imagine that once they make the plan, that the plan will just break and it'll be useless. The reality is that nobody has ever planned a week and then the week went the way they planned. That's never happened, not even once in the history of humanity. So that's fine. Planning your week doesn't mean that nothing will shift. But doing no planning is kind of like a river where there's no banks. You know,
Right.
the river needs some boundaries in order to run in a certain direction. If there's no banks of the river, the water's just everywhere.
Right.
And nothing is happening. So, you know, we need some things to have structure and rhythm. You know, we don't want our, you know, there are folks who like to, you know, just like work from the cuff, you know, they just like to plan in the moment. And some things, like I would say weekly planning, that rhythm, like a heartbeat, you know, you don't want that to be random. You want that to be planned and there. So I think planning can be really powerful. I plan on Friday afternoons, and I actually think that is, I will put my stake in the ground that that is the best time to plan next week, because it's often kind of a slower time. You know, folks are closing up the week, and it's a great time to look at the next week and figure out how to plan. So I plan in essentially 3 big steps. So the first step is to look for tasks and that you need, look for things you need to do next week. And
Yeah.
they come from a lot of places, you know, and so I actually have a checklist that I use. So I remember to check the places that my tasks come from. But some common ones are, you might have a, you know, project management software like Asana or something like that. There might be tasks in there that are for next week. So you might look there. You want to look at goals. What do my list of goals right now tell me I need to do for next week? You probably have some things in your email that require you to do something about them. So email is a place that
Yeah.
tasks can be hiding, right? They might be hiding in your phone reminders because you said, remind me next week to, you know, say this to Joe on Wednesday, you know, so
Yeah.
there might be tasks in there. There might be tasks in a notebook or on a Post-it. So figuring out where all the places that your tasks might be hiding. They could be hiding in Slack. There's lots of places. So figure out what are all the places my tasks could be hiding, gather them all, gather all those tasks into a place. Then the second step is to organize them. And
Yeah.
organizing them depends on your context. So for me, I like to organize my tasks into things that I'm committed to do that I really must do next week, and things that I might do or I hope to do, but I'm definitely not like staying up all night to get them done if I didn't get to them. They're like hope to do's or maybe do's. So, but you might organize, some folks might organize by project. They might say, okay, I got 2 big projects on my plate right now. So here's all the tasks related to the summit I'm planning. And here's all the tasks related to managing the 3 direct reports I have. You know,
Okay.
those are my 2 big lanes of work. Yeah.
We're going to get those tasks out. We're going to identify them and we're going to put them into the schedule. So we're going to organize them. We're going to assign time to them. Otherwise, they won't get done.
Yep. And I think assigning time to them, you know, a great productivity teacher once shared the idea of some people are whaters and some people are wheners, which I thought was an interesting idea, that some people really like to say, this is when I'm going to do that. Tuesday morning, I'm going to write that agenda. And other people are like, don't tell me when to do things. I want a list of what to do and I'll decide when to do them in the moment.
Okay.
So I think that's an interesting idea. But
it is, and one of the things I've come across is that my brain works differently during the day. So if I want to be creative, I need to do it in the morning. I need to write in the morning, and I'm going to do emails and spreadsheets in the afternoon. And if you think about, and I believe that is 90% of the people or 70% of the people, and other people have flipped the other way around. So one of the things that happens in offices or in teams is we organize things around people's availability, not how well their brains are functioning.
Yes, exactly. We need to manage our energy more than we need to manage our time, because our energy is the resource that actually gets things done. So I totally agree. I like to call myself a morning creator and an afternoon connector. So I would love to avoid talking to anybody in the morning because I can do my best thinking and creating and writing work in the morning. And my energy flags a little bit in the afternoon, and talking to others actually gets my energy back up. And so
Wow.
I'm great at meeting in the afternoon. And so I try to organize my schedule that way. But I agree, organizing those tasks into the way that makes sense to you. Some people want to organize them by context, you know, like these are all the phone calls I have to make. These are all the errands I have to run, you know, and they put them into what type of task are they. But I think organizing them in a way that makes sense to you is really key when planning your week.
Yeah. And one of the other things I'd add to that is that as a small business owner, kind of entrepreneur, people get kind of scared around planning, but you can plan free time. You can plan random thinking time. You can plan business development. You can plan free thinking time. So Friday from 10 to 12, I'm going to block it out. It's my free thinking time. It's my creativity time. It's okay. You can put a structure around that as opposed to going, well, I'll just start on Monday and see what happens, because I don't think it's going to work that way. So it's okay to do that.
And you can plan your joy too, you know?
Yeah.
One of my favorite authors, Laura Vanderkam, talks about, actually in an upcoming book, I'm reading a pre-version of it. She's going to talk about planning one big adventure each week, which is more like something that takes a few hours or a half a day, and one small adventure each week. You know, and you can plan for that if you do good planning. So you can say, okay, well, why don't I take my family out to dinner on Wednesday at our favorite place, you know, and we'll all have something to look forward to. Or, you know, let me see if I can meet up with a friend for a coffee on Thursday afternoon. Or I'm going to walk around the used bookstore during my lunch hour on Monday, because Monday I hate, and that'll give me something to look forward to all Monday morning, you know, knowing that that's how I'm going to spend my lunch hour. So you can plan your joy, you know, and in fact, you're more likely to get to it if you actually do plan it each week. And then I would say the final step for planning is, I think folks should plan every week and every day. So once you've got your week plan, then each day at the end of the day, if you can, and if you don't get to it, you have to do it the next morning, but just make a list for what you're going to get done that day. And on my list, it's just a piece of paper, and I put my meetings. I like alliteration, so you're going to notice that. But it's got meetings, and I just put, you know, these are my meetings that I have today. It's got must-dos, which are no more than 3 or 4 things that I must do today. The kind of things that are so important to me that I'm really going to stay up late if something happens and I can't get to them. They're like so important to get done today that I'm doing that. So I really high bar for what gets on my must-do list. Sometimes it's only one thing. It's truly, because if my kids come home from school sick and I end up at the doctor's appointments this afternoon, I'm not going to do anything other than that thing tonight, you know? So I really keep a high bar for that. And then the final list is maybe, and everything there, I feel like a bonus, you know, and those are the things that I'd love to do, or that are really fun for me to do, that I would love to spend my time on today, but maybe they don't have to get done. You know, like on my maybe list this week is buying my family matching Christmas pajamas, which definitely does not need to happen, but it's a fun task that at some point this fall I'm going to do. And so, you know, sometimes when my energy is low and I want to do something fun and not something hard, I look at that list and pick something that needs to get done anyway and will be enjoyable and energizing for me.
Well, that sounds like a really beautiful moment to put in there and look forward to. So, so adjusting when things shift, what happens with your maybes and your must-dos and your meetings?
Yeah, well, if you have that plan, it is significantly easier to adjust when things come up.
Right.
In fact, it happened to me this week. My husband had emergency appendectomy surgery 2 nights ago. And we didn't expect that. We did not wake up on Monday expecting anybody in our family to be getting surgery, but that's what happened. And he's recovering just great. Everything is fine. But
Good.
My day on Monday was spent at the emergency room, and my day on Tuesday was spent taking care of him after he was recovering and making sure he got the medicines he needed. And so I canceled everything that I had on my list for the day on Tuesday, or, you know, pretty much all of my tasks and certainly all of my meetings. And so because I had planned and I didn't have an overfull week, I was able to easily move things around to a couple different things. I moved some things to next week. I moved some things to later this week. And I was able to revisit my list yesterday after he was pretty settled and say, you know what? I thought that I was going to do all of these things this week, but I've got it all in one place. It's a lot easier for me to edit down, saying I kind of lost 2 days this week. I thought I would have 5 days. I really am only going to have 3 work days, but because it's already organized, it didn't take me more than a few minutes to say, you know what, I'm not going to get to that. I'm not going to get to that. I'm not going to get to that. Let me let a few people know, hey, emergency surgery in my family, we're all good, but I'm not going to get to that thing. Sure. It made that so much easier. And
Of
I didn't
course.
have to have a vague sense of, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I was able to have a very specific sense of, okay, my now I need to focus on A, B, and C. And I've decided not to do X, Y, and Z. And because I had planned, it was so much easier to make those pivots.
Okay. Wow. What a powerful story. So I guess you had an M for medical emergency to put into
That's right. Yeah.
into your
So
list.
must do meetings, maybe do's, medical emergencies. Yeah.
That
Normally I
clears
don't have that
everything.
column.
Everything's gone. We got big M here, big medical, big mother of a medical emergency. So if you're starting off this process, I'm going to hark back to atomic habits. If you're building a planning habit for the first time, we start with small, don't we? We start small.
Yeah.
What's the next
That's right.
step in building habits? We start small, establish the habit first, and then what do we do?
Right. And then you can improve it. That's right. Because, you can't, we so often want to bite off more than we can chew, especially when we're trying to do habits. We're like, new year, new me, eat right, go for runs every day, get, 10 hours of sleep every night, and yoga, and also, salads for lunch, and we just can't do all those things at the same time. So starting really small is hard to do, but it's really important. It's actually how you get things done without just giving up on everything. So, I'll give an example from my own life. I had an inkling that I was not feeling great about being woken up by my kids. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, and they're a great alarm clock. I never set an alarm unless I have to be up really, really early for like a airplane flight, but my kids are reliably awake in the 6 o'clock hour. And I found that, getting woken up by them was good in some ways because they would sometimes come and cuddle me in the bed, which I loved. But sometimes it would just mean that I was then parenting while trying to start my own day. And so
Right.
I wanted to start a new habit of getting up before my kids. And so I started setting an alarm for 6 o'clock. And I started, my inkling was, okay, well, what can I do during that time? Well, maybe I can get some work done. Maybe I can do some exercise. Maybe I'll meditate. I should probably journal. Maybe I can start preparing dinner for the night. Everything that in this, like, what are the habits that highly effective people do in the morning? There's 1,000 articles written like that. And I started thinking, what's my morning routine? And I caught myself and said, you know what? I'm just going to start waking up at 6. That's all I'm doing right now. That is success. Waking up at 6. So for the first week or two, I'm just going to wake up and call it a success if I have woken up, regardless of how I spend the time before my children are up. It doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. I can look at Facebook, but I am up, and I'm just going to focus on that part of the habit, just the getting awake part. And then I will improve that routine later.
Sure.
And maybe I'll make it more effective for what I want. Maybe I'll say, okay, well, let me get out and go for a walk when it's still nice, cool mornings and I'll be alone and sip my tea. Maybe I'll try that for a little while and see if that's getting me some of the benefits I want. But yes, starting small with those habits, and then it's so small that it's easy to not break it. Never miss twice.
Set yourself
right?
up for success. Okay.
Exactly.
So the next topic, our last topic, is getting your email under control, which I don't know. I'm not great at planning. I don't know about my emails either. I've never quite worked it out. Please help me, Jessica. Share some of your wisdom on emails, because if we don't have our emails under control, everything goes.
Yes.
Everything else goes, doesn't it?
It is. And it's such a taboo topic sometimes, that folks are worried about talking about how their email feels out of control for them. So I love this. I lead workshops for teams and sometimes public workshops about getting your email under control. And it is one of my favorite things to do, because we have people come to the workshop, and I always, if people are willing to share, I have them share, like, how many emails are in your inbox right now? And I've had people with 90,000 emails come to my workshops, and then there's somebody over there with 7,000, and they're like, I thought I was bad. You have 90,000,
90,000 unread emails. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Well, and so we have a lot of fun with this. But folks, I also had the very first person who bought a ticket at my first public workshop for getting your email under control told me after the fact that she missed her friend's wedding because she didn't get the email invite. And she was like, that was the moment I realized that I could no longer have my email be so out of control. So, I take folks through a 4-step process when we do the workshops. I'll tell you what those 4 steps are. And so the first step is I show people how to pick a date in the past and archive every email before that date. And depending on the email system that you're using, there's different structures to do this, but it's very easy, especially in Gmail.
Okay.
You find an email that you find so let's say today is early September. So maybe we say, you know what, every email before August 1st of this year, I'm just not going to ever get to it. The reality is like, it's just sitting in my inbox and I'm not going to ever get to it. So let's just get those archived. And the other thing is in archiving, especially if you're using a Gmail-based system, it's not gone. It's just not in your inbox anymore. You can actually find it with search and all of those things. So I give people a little pep talk because this sometimes produces a lot of anxiety for people that they think that one day they're magically going to get back to that email from December 2019 that's still in their inbox. And the reality is they're not. So I kind of give people that boost.
And that's okay.
That's okay. Exactly.
That's okay, isn't it? Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. Yes, because it's just not realistic. You can't get to it. So acknowledging that, and then I show them how to find them and then click archive on all of them. So, if you've got 90,000 emails and you say you pick a date a month ago, you're going to immediately get down probably to under 1,000. And that feels like a huge burden off of your back.
Yeah.
So I have folks archive old stuff. Yep. Archive old stuff right away. Then I have them unsubscribe. So I give folks like a 10 or 15 minute work block to just see how many can you unsubscribe in the next 10 or 15 minutes. And I just show them how to do that, make sure they can find, because some email marketers are sneaky and you have to click like 4 to 5 times, plus enter your email address again. So some people don't make it easy, but taking the time to unsubscribe is in a block can be really helpful. So I encourage folks to take some time and just unsubscribe. The third step is I show folks how to use filters, and filters can be amazing for saying, you know what, I do want to get this newsletter, but I don't need it to come to my inbox. I can have it go over here to this folder and I'll check it every once in a while when it works for me.
Okay.
Or you can say, you know what, I actually, somebody might say, in my job, I send out calendar invitations to hundreds of people. And then every time they click accept, I get an email back. And I don't need that. I don't want that. I can look in the calendar invite if I want to see who's accepted. I don't want an email every time somebody clicks accept. So you can actually go find that one of those emails and tell your email provider, just delete these when they come. I don't want these emails.
Okay.
So I talk through people, how can you filter emails to get less in your inbox in the first place?
Wow. That's fantastic, because there's a point at which you just have overwhelm. If you've got, I think I open my iPad in the morning and like it updates 70 emails. I'm going, what?
I know. Exactly.
When am I ever going to find the time to delete all these emails or to unsubscribe all these emails? So that's really, really helpful. Thank you, Jessica, for that, and of course to all our listeners. I'm sure there's plenty more of Jessica's fantastic advice on her website. So I really wanted to just ask you a little bit. You touched on your classroom teacher days, and you mentioned it was kids as well. So what lessons did you learn? What did you take into your current work from teaching kids?
Oh my goodness. Well, honestly, teaching kids and teaching adults is not that different. And so I think it's not an accident that I found myself into being an adult trainer these days and leading professional development, because a lot of the same things that help kids learn really well, feeling great about being in the space, feeling really welcome.
Yeah.
Clarity on what we're trying to accomplish, in a given day or week or month as learners. And then also just time to practice. I found that, the way I lead my email workshops, as one example, is it's not, hey, let me spend 20 minutes telling you how to get your email under control. It's actually, let me spend 5 minutes telling you one thing about getting your email under control. And then I'm going to give you 10 or 15 minutes. Go do it. Go archive right now and come back to the chat and tell me, how it went and ask your questions. And folks leave having done the work. So I think like when I lead workshops, I love to not, it's just like with students, whether I was teaching, sixth graders how to add fractions, I can't just tell them how to add fractions and then they walk out knowing it. I have to say, hey, let me show you a couple of examples. Now try it on your own. Try this one. Okay, try this one. Try this one. So with adult learners, it's the same thing. So when I'm teaching people how to plan their week, I say, okay, go find all your tasks for next week. I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. When we do it together.
So you have to take, like you would with a child, you have to take the time to ensure that the lesson has been absorbed. Because I think, in when we get older, we have this kind of, well, I've given you information, you look intelligent. Now I assume you understand English and you're capable of doing it. And no one's going to sit there going, I have no idea what you're talking about. So
right. There's no lack of knowledge. It's not like the thing holding you back from getting your email under control is that nobody has ever written about how to run an email inbox. Right. Like the knowledge is not the lack, it's there. You could go read a whole books about how to keep your email under control. It's not that you don't know. It's the same with like eating healthy. It's not like we don't know what foods are healthy. It's that implementing it is the hard part. And so creating space for people to implement is the magic. It's not just the information, it's the time and practice to put it into practice in their real life. So that's true for kids. That's true for adults.
Yeah. And they need to be able to do that at their own pace, because you can't assume that they've actually got it, or they're going to stick their hands up and go, no, I'm really sorry, Jessica, could I ask you this one more time? Whereas a kid might, or at least they should be able to. So thank you very much for sharing all of that amazing, those amazing tips and information. We normally like to sort of leave our guests with at least one or two, mega tips on this. And I think you've already touched on it. So what is your core thing, the one thing that everybody needs to take away from this conversation?
I think if there's one thing that you try to build into your week so that you can be more effective and have more joy and ease, it's to give yourself a month to try planning every Friday. It doesn't need to take more than 20 or 30 minutes, but planning your week before it happens is the most effective thing you can do to get more done and have more fun doing it.
Okay. Well, you heard it from Jessica, and she knows what's good for you in terms of productivity and planning. And I'll agree with her entirely, although I'm not that great at planning myself. I know it's the right thing to do. So listeners out there, we've covered a huge amount of ground. This has been really, really interesting. Jessica, I noticed that you have a weekly email, the Friday 5, and a monthly newsletter. And also on your website, you've got a whole set of tools and resources that you use and find incredible value in. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. If folks want to get hold of you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so my website is jessicaeastmanstewart.com. Folks can find a lot of freebies there, icebreaker questions for your meetings, how to get organized, lots of great free resources there. I'm also on Instagram with daily tips at Joyfully Managed Team, and also on LinkedIn at Jessica Eastman Stewart with daily tips for managers and leaders and productivity and joy and ease.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And Jessica, of course, is a coach. So we haven't had time to squeeze that in today. But if you like what she's talked about and you'd like to work with Jessica, she covers coaching for teams. Just quickly, who do you coach and what do you coach?
Yeah, I coach leaders who are working on productivity, team leadership, team culture, those pieces. And I also coach individuals who are working on some of those topics. And then what I really love to do is lead entire teams in trainings on all of these topics.
Fantastic. So listeners, if there isn't something today in our conversations that has grabbed you, go and check out Jessica's website. We'll put all the links into the show notes, and I'm convinced that you'll find at least 5 things that will be life-changing for you, especially if you're running a small business and you're an entrepreneur. So Jessica, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute joy talking to you.
Thank you.
And listeners, please take action, build awareness, live consciously, and purpose and meaning will always follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.